Oh, welcome to my YouTube site. I'm enjoying this protein drink. Very strong too. High concentrate of 40 grams. Lactose free as well. You have to drink it slowly because of the amount of protein in there. It's like it's like an enormous amount at one time. More than you can actually consume in a meal or receive in a meal or find in a meal. Well, anyway, here you'll find very simple activities. Nothing fancy. Or anything fancy? Zero. While other people are trying to get physically fit by doing fancy things, the message that supremely surfaces there is that they're more interested in looking good doing it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it has one danger, that the simpler things, the origin, the beginning, the original condition and form it was done in, is forgotten, and a lot of factors that existed in that simple activity has been lost along the way. Let's put it in these terms. With the following translations or interpretations, you find yourself learning something that is further away from where the earlier translations and versions and interpretations were near to it. But that's okay. My idea is to do something very basic, keep it simple, because that's how we were designed. There's nothing wrong with making things more interesting and fancier. The problem is that it throws you off course because it starts generating illusory images and views. We tend to focus on more, and then we lose sight of where the real power is at. Okay? Let me finish this. It's very good. It's called Cyto Gainer. This is not a commercial. I'm just sharing with you. In case you're wondering, hey, what's that guy drinking? So what do I want to talk about? I want to take you back to what we really need to be focusing on. Those simple things in life, the basic foundation. And you know, we say the word basic and it has a different meaning. We think it's cheap. We think it's something's absent from it. But not so. Basic in this significance is equivalent to the foundation that is necessary to be laid down first, applied, and keep as that platform upon which you construct whatever design you have in mind, so that it receives power and authority, and if you're dealing with the mind, thinking, informed decision making abilities that will arise because of it, keeping it as the source that you will tap into all the time, not just a few times. So the foundation is always necessary, and when you reach a certain point in life where your thinking faculties are seasoned enough, mature enough, calloused enough, and sort of like more receptive enough, you suddenly can peer through the constantly changing forms of expression that owe their existence to that which lies hidden before it, even earlier than it. Okay? And that's the whole idea. So what we got to do is recognize that when you look at the stuff on my website, it may look simple, it may look repetitious, it may look even physically monotonous, or whatever boredom label you are familiar with, it may look like that to you. Not necessarily because that's what it is. It's the most important method of approach you will see the most of. This old guy constantly punching. Well, there's a lot of benefits to that. One, it's designed to return back to the time when punching was at its prime. It's designed to take you, your cardiovascular system, the condition of your heart, back to its earliest stages. And I don't mean only to what the condition it was in when you were a teenager or a child, but the condition it acquires in that early age as a teenager and a child, the condition it acquires because of exercising and training. As if though that's always what you've been doing. So that's the whole objective of that. Plus, all aerobic exercise that stimulate your cardiovascular system help in the construction. Actually, they send a message to the memory of your physical form, your biological structure, to create the things it needs to function. More of itself, okay? More capillaries are produced and come into existence. More veins are produced and come into existence. Your heart ends up with more arteries and veins that serve as backup systems in case any of the earlier existing ones collapse or fail or weaken. Our design is such that it will respond to those emergencies with those things we need if we send a message through exercising or hard work or doing to it beforehand. Get the message? Now, some of you may not have the necessary awareness, but hopefully it spontaneously arises in its earliest stages just from listening to the mumbo jumbo I have to say. The reason why I say mumbo jumbo is because it is mumbo jumbo. We're amazing creatures. We can take sounds, shrieks, hollers, woofs, whatever the sound you make sounds like. Okay, cover all the names. And then attach collectively in agreement with everybody else within our circles that this is what that sound is going to mean. And once we mutually agree to that and pass it on to our children and children's children, all of a sudden the original impression it gave as a sound or a holler or a squeak dissipates to be replaced by significance meaning, a significance identity. Oh, that sound means this. I know what he says. We no longer say, hey, that sound means that. We say, okay, I'll respond to that quickly. Our brain immediately attaches an interpretation to it because that's what we've learned. So we're the only animals on this planet that can devise a means, and I'm going to use this term, to deceive ourselves into thinking that we've said something significant. No other animal can do that. They have other means that are ingeniously designed by the creative source that allows their existence to communicate to each other. See? Body language. Some animals, some creatures use chemicals. Some use scent. Some use body motions, if I haven't already said that. And then some of us find ourselves being a little more stylistic, and we create other configurations that we mutually agree upon to convey thoughts we have no other way of seeing, receiving, or knowing. Which means that as well as being creatures that can devise ways of communicating, we also have a way of turning around and destroying any other means of communication. Using the same tool, the brain, responsible for everything we do, we go ahead and say that what the brain has designed differently is not as good as what the brain itself has designed that we are willing to accept is good. As if though we are receiving special equipment that nobody else has. A divine message that, because you don't communicate like I do, you have no access to unless I tell you so. You are not going to be treated on an equal standing. Okay? We have the ability to transcend that kind of illusion and misconception. And at the same time, we have a brain that allows us to become victimized by those very same things. And it seems kind of awkward that in our thinking, and yet I'm impressed, it seems that in our thinking, in our activities, that all come from a brain we've been given, we use the very same limbs or extensions of the brain to say, hey brain, you made a mistake here. Only because we did not utilize it in the form it was first received by earlier people. And what happens is we have a tendency to, let me give you this analogy here. It's like a ladder that helps you get to the highest plateaus. You first discover that ladder from the earliest rung you encounter. With each exploration, discovery, and learning, you climb another rung, another step. You get to the top, you see all the expanse, glory, you come back down, you try to tell everybody else. A few listen, a few don't. They climb, some don't want to climb because for their fear of heights, and that's the way some people treat knowledge. They're afraid of what it can do to their unknown sense about it, that they have no specific experience to relate why they're afraid. But the point is this: as the centuries and the years go by, you discover that you get people that are like the kind that realize that ladder is there, they climb up. At some point along the way, they start destroying the rungs or the steps underneath them because they're from the past. And there's no need for those things, those steps and those rungs to exist anymore as part of that ladder. And what they do is they deprive others from reaching the plateau they were using those rungs that they destroyed to get to. Okay? And they attempt to establish a monopoly. And as you know, all hell breaks loose when people think they're better than other people. So it's an amazing thing that it calls for further creativity because of the way it was designed. That ladder came from somebody's brain. Well, the brain of another person will come around and say, just create another ladder. Pick up the rungs from everywhere you find them and start creating that ladder so that you can provide access to those deprived from climbing through this man's ladder that didn't belong to him anyway. They can acquire the same height, level, and plateau of awareness, knowledge, and activities. It's like that with everything we see in society. It's like that with exercise. It's like that with business. It's like that in the medical field. It's like that in just in the prisons. It's like that in jail. It's like that in the streets. No matter where you go, you're going to see the very same principle operating. And the reason why you do is because that principle that is universally operating within all these things we see, which even hide it from our sight, is the implicate order responsible for it. That implicate order operating as a principle within everything we see comes from the human brain. And because when you look in the mirror, you don't see your brain, you see the physical, facial structure and pattern reflecting back at you. You miss out on the real reason and the real source of all these things we think and do. Were we to constantly be reminded by being able to see it, it would change your entire perspective on reality. That's why learning what you have not learned is very crucial to your development, because it allows you to understand why in America we have men in the past who have said all men are created equal. What that is referring to is not only the wonderful qualities and quantities that arise from our existence that we have been endowed with, it refers also to the tool we have been given. We've been given an anatomy. We've been given a muscle anatomy. We've been given a kinematics anatomy. We have been given a biological form that allows us to do things our brain would not be able to interact with without them. Further, we've been given a brain that allows us enough chemical interaction, electrochemical interaction, to even conceive these things as a response to the stimuli our design effectuates. We are created equal in that sense. And the great thing about America is, and you really, basically, that's exactly how you have to think. You really have to be American minded, no matter what your ethnic group is. As a matter of fact, that isn't totally true either. It doesn't really matter. When you look at ancient recorded documents, you discover that men from whatever ethnicity or religious belief, the few men, not the religions themselves, nor the faiths, nor whatever, that may be an elemental byproduct of the brain. Few men have been able to think the very same thoughts and views that you find perpetuating and traveling through history into our present time that we recognize as being, let's put it in simple terms, the Bill of Rights, okay? And that state of mind you happen to find yourself in that says, I have the freedom to do what I want. Why are other people who share this same planet with me attempting to rob me from that freedom? Because of what I just described to you. They can't see what makes men equal. We're not talking about that you've learned to be a carpenter, that you've learned to be a medical doctor, that you've learned to be a mechanic, that you've learned to be an artist, honed all your skills. We're talking about that neither one can do those things the other has done. And if they do, never to the same extent that they have specialized in. And when you look at a general practitioner, you're discovering that the same principle applies. No one is better than anybody else. However, what they have practiced the most and spend their time focusing on because of their brain is what they prove to excel in. Now, if you don't get blinded by what they're excelling in, you discover that there are a lot of other deficiencies. And the idea is to strengthen all your deficiencies because we all have that same spectrum. In a spectrum, you will find many different hues, many different colors, and never as bright as the other spectrum or the other spectrum. We're talking about multiplicity here. If you have 1,000 people in a room and they all go to medical school, you'll discover that there'll be hues of expertise there. And then if you look at their faults, you'll discover that, wow, some of their faults that won't do them any good in the medical field they've studied are unique and expertly developed, but useless in the medical field. So we got to understand that just because you can't use it in the same field doesn't mean that it's any less than the field you can't use it in, because the same reverse principle applies. The field you can't use it in can't not be used in the field you are discovering you're having a problem adapting the medical field to. Get it? So if my mechanic skills are considered less than that medical field, I can guarantee you that the same principle applies. That medical field is useless in my mechanics field. I cannot put a heart where a carburetor ought to be. Can't put lungs where a carburetor ought to be. Though the principles that can be described as operating are similar, it is only in the detailed functions that they look like they belong in. And if you place a chimpanzee's, let's put it, if you place a chimpanzee's hand on the wrist of a man, you are asking for total rejection. And then come up with the question, but wait a minute, 5 fingers, why doesn't it work? Because the laws of kinematic are the same. But underlying that, the value of where it functions best is unalterable. Not that it's any better than a chimpanzee's hand. A human being's hand has other qualities that define its unique use. The chimpanzee's hand has other qualities, principles of operations that define its unique use. It may not be able to have the dexterity we do to paint a picture with the finesse and detail that you see magnificent artists painting, but it can hang from a tree for hours where your fingers and dexterity are numb. So if it looks like I'm jumping from one description to another, is because it's exactly what I'm doing using the principle of equivalency. And you got to understand that. Mankind is equal and shares value under the same equal standing because of the laws of equivalency. You have the same equal rights as I do. And then if you get technical, you can see what they are. But if you don't have that technicality that allows you to see what they are, you get the prejudice, the discrimination, the racism, the illusory or delusional hate you have based on previous learning. Now I'm going into other fields that may not specifically be detailed on my YouTube, but the underlying principles that go undetected and unseen responsible for those activities are all the thoughts we think about in our brain that together produce something as simple as watching a man punch a punching bag, watching someone perform jumping jacks, watching someone perform a marathon run. Yes, we have specific functions in the brain and faculties that do that, but the brain uses the entire organ to perform one little function, like running or punching. And even if your brain isn't permeated with all the information more than others have, it will still use the entire brain to perform that little one function, no matter how illiterate that person is. You can watch it in a baby when it's growing up. The kind of information that fills it is beyond our reach because it is the kind that is passed on from generation to generation, which allows cells to remember what to do, especially at the stem cell level. And then as we get older and our brain reaches that moment that says, hey, we can now bring in more information in whatever form it may exist, even if it's unlike what is determining our functioning design on the cellular level, okay? So it may seem like a lot of mumbo jumbo, but let me tell you something. The brain was designed to operate developmentally in response to the incoming irritation of stimuli. Yes, the mumbo jumbo we hear. Prior to understanding what a language means when you're learning it, it's mumbo jumbo. Prior to understanding what some chemical reaction means, all your brain sees is mumbo jumbo. Even if you're awed by, that's a language in chemical form, that's the extent of your grasp, because you've learned at some point to recognize the inherent value in those things that may not be clearly comprehensible. So, yeah, mumbo jumbo. The brain uses noise, what we consider noise, whether cosmic, whether a bird chirping in the tree, whether an ant, if you had some means of recording the noise it makes, even the incredibly low, inaudible sounds in the environment, they are all contributing to the development of your brain, which is, even without you trying, is supplying you with a constant input of sound so that it can develop. It's doing the job for you because we lack the necessary continuous motive for doing so that the subconscious mind has been designed to possess for you. So back to what I was saying. When you look at my YouTube site, you'll watch this old guy doing his thing and know that he has more mumbo jumbo in his brain than possibly anybody else on YouTube. And even those guys from Yale, Harvard, and the universities that speak about sciences, even more than they do. Because I pay attention to what their sense of specialty and partiality tells them. It's irrelevant. No, to me, it's relevant because it's about our brain. It's about the human brain. It's not about acquiring a degree only, and I have my degrees. It's not acquiring about degrees only. It's not about acquiring the favor of a specific group of people that you have specifically learned from or have studied to be able to communicate to. No. It's not about just politics where a larger number of people can be handled and regulated. It's not just about law. It's about everything the human brain is responsible for producing. Even the crap. We got a lot of uncharted terrain in the world of waste, toxin, crap. You can call it shit if you want to, because they are utilized as new energy resources once we find the means to do so. And coming to that conclusion beforehand with that same brain responsible for the production of those things telling us you can't see it right now, but that's a potential resource for energy. The thing about this is that whenever you come to my YouTube section, always remember that what I'm doing is about the human brain. The human brain is the source of every delusion, every illusion, every scientific endeavor, everything that is not considered a scientific endeavor, everything that is beneficial to mankind, and everything that even has proven to destroy mankind. Everything you can possibly discover, everything you have not discovered, has its origin in the human brain. Nothing outside of the human brain can be blamed as being the source. Now let's back up a little bit. The human brain was designed by something outside it, which is even greater. To attempt to talk about that, we would have to use new language, ancient ones long forgotten, and you will only hear nothing but the garble mumbo jumbo the astronauts can detect on machines as cosmic radiation. I would be here opening my mouth and it would sound like cosmic radiation in order for me to tell you what that source responsible for creating the human brain is all about. I don't think you'd understand the word. I wouldn't understand what I was saying either. However, I would recognize what I was thinking that preceded what I would say that no one would understand. Get the message? So, keeping that in mind, we can peer through differences, fancy things, nonsense, to see the truth about an underlying source that escapes our immediate perception. So, rather than waste my time with fancy kicks, flexibilities, contortions, others are doing that. And I spend my time watching them saying, whoa, oh, I still have to stretch out here. I still have to do this. Yeah. But my main primary specialty is going to be for my later age in life is the punching, the way the human body moves. Okay? At some point later on, when I have been satisfied that my legs have the same flexible mobility that my arms do, I will gladly show my arms. I may end up looking like a chimpanzee, but the point of the matter is that I have to make sure that my body language matches what I am thinking I want to do. Not just mimicking somebody and saying this is the technique you use to counter a punch or a kick here. This is the best way to perform it. No, anything that is left to partial human description is going to fall short when the reason to begin with is influenced by the fact that they do not spend their time focusing on what the human brain is all about. And they do not care to think about neuroscience. In their mind, it has nothing to do with martial arts. It has nothing to do with boxing. It has nothing to do with art. It has nothing to do with yoga. Wrong. The way I see it, that if you really want to comprehend what those branches and leaves are all about, you don't just study the trunk. You study the soil the roots are buried in, because that's exactly what the brain is. So, if I momentarily look like a madman, I'm glad I do, because it's only further proving my point about what I'm telling you. However, no single brain can contain all the necessary creativity we see arising that fills our world and environment from all the other brains, okay? They may not possess all the knowledge I'm describing now. They may not possess all the knowledge you know, or they may not possess all the knowledge some other scientist is describing. But the thing about it is that it's a brain nevertheless, with untapped resources, waiting for somebody to prime it with new stuff to pull what lays hidden in it. And no single, I'm going to repeat this, no single part will describe at one time the entirety of creativity to its fullest extent. All right? As a matter of fact, I believe that the human brain is a little more expansive than the boundaries we recognize as we're still not looking far out into space. That point in the boundary in the cosmos that we say we can see the Big Bang. No. That boundary is an illusion representing that boundary we're describing, and still falling short of further horizons and boundaries that will be discovered and placed as markers by the human brain itself. So our human brain is sort of like developing in proportion to those boundaries we establish in the cosmos. Our human brain is developing proportionally to those boundaries we establish as human capabilities and skills. Our brain is developing in proportion to those viewpoints that take human thinking further. And every time we describe anything outside of the environment, from physical activities, which includes everything imaginable, okay, on a human activity scale, nothing excluded, and every time the brains describes something on the mindscape realm, which includes everything imaginable, unimaginable, even thought of or unthought of that we may reject, every detail it gives is describing universal principles that operate within the human brain itself. Never mind that we think it's about those things that cannot be proven or unproven. Those things we describe that others will say provable or unprovable are really descriptions of principles that operate in and within the human brain. We look at the cosmos, we describe a black hole we've never seen. We look at the cosmos, we describe a star billions of times larger than our own sun. We're describing something in our own brain that allows us to even glimpse at a tiny glimmer of such a thing being out there. Every and any description, when we put into written form, is about universal principles that paradoxically happen to exist in something temporal, that describe those things within the human brain. So if you want to know more about yourself and what underlies the human brain, we have to look at all those things that we put in written form in a condition and state that allows the brain to place it back into thought condition and thought state in order to acquire that knowledge. We have to look at everything around us, or we go through life knowing nothing about ourselves and sort of like partially informed about anything around us. And then we never reach our human potential. So, I stay with the basics, I stay with the simple in order to get to know myself better, keep myself in better health and condition, my cardiovascular system functioning at its best, proportional to the age that I happen to be in, so that when it's time for me to pass away, I give back with interest. Get it? Get it? I go out with a fight. I don't do anything to increase my chances of going out any sooner, like many in physical activities are accustomed to doing. Those things are best left for when you have no other choice. War, for instance. I mean, even people who don't care about what we're talking about here know to do. You threaten. I was originally born in Puerto Rico, so I was born in hillbilly terrain. So even a hillbilly can detect when it's time to declare war, even if he's rootin' tootin' prior to it. But the point of the matter is that what I'm saying is that we have these inherited qualities and quantities within our brain and our design that tells us when it's time to put our foot down. Some of us want to put it down too many times, and that's where the problems come in. But the point I'm getting at is here, it's very simple. We just need to just keep from complicating matters. Okay? Forget about imitating other people. Recognize that what you think you're learning from them, in the terms and in the descriptive way that you are interpreting, it's about revealing what you have inside of you, or you wouldn't even be able to think you know what they're talking about. And that's what's amazing about the brain. So once you understand that, you discover if what's in that man isn't my reality, it's his reality. How is it possible that we're able to communicate our hidden thoughts to each other just by reading print or seeing the language that comes from the bodies? activities when they perform something in order to emphasize the message they're giving. How is that possible? Because our brain has been able to recreate equivalents that approximate to the minutest closeness what that person may have in his thoughts. And if you notice, we have a system that allows you to discriminate what it means under the law. And sometimes just one tiny incremental difference that no matter how much the function is alike to that other, that tiny incremental difference will say, no, the law says that this specific difference says we treat it like this for its own inherent qualities and effects and interaction that uniquely represent it. It's like a fingerprint. You know it's a fingerprint, but the differences make it different. Okay? So you have to recognize the boundaries of why things are the way they are as far as their identity is concerned, the boundaries of why functions are functions. Let me give you an example by that. A kangaroo jumps. So does a jumping mouse. So does a frog. So does a grasshopper. That jumping mechanism doesn't indicate that they belong to the same species, genera, or family. What it does indicate is that they have an analogous function that allows them to have mobility in a jumping way. Our brain is designed to communicate that same way also. When it wants to identify jump, it will look at all its ever seen jumping to know what jumping means. It doesn't just use the word jumping as you were taught, or it doesn't just use the word, the function jumping as you did earlier in order to establish that experience in your mind. No, it was designed to use as many jumping experiences as possible, whether they were performed by the same experience or not. Okay, now, I may be complicating this a little bit right now, so I'm going to back up and go back to what I was saying. Thank you for coming to my YouTube website. And know that it may look simple, what you see me doing, and unattractive, and a waste of time, but with each and every one of those little simple functions you see me performing, I'm thinking about the cosmological constants. And my brain is using those things to help me develop and fine-tune those simple activities. And it does that in every human being, whether they're conscious of having learned those things or not. On this note, I say thank you for visiting my YouTube. I hope you enjoyed my old guy exercises. Have a beautiful day.